Start off immediately with my presentation on the theory aspects on the future-proofing the digitalized municipal distribution electricity utility of the future. Okay, so as indicated, my session on 30 minutes will cover theoretical aspects in the main on future-proofing the digitalized municipal distribution electricity utility of the future. And just as the presentation outline, I'll very quickly give you a perspective on the purpose of the webinars, understanding of future-proofing, the proposed journey, the evolving power sector, the power sector in transition, key success factors, our DIR, the change in the scope, and understanding grid stability. And then, of course, talk about the new wave of the decentralized energy market. And then I'll give context to the South African power crisis and the need for future-proofing and what could a future-proof municipal electricity business look like. I will go a bit fast because, as I say, I just have 30 minutes. I've got about 25 slides to cover, but you will get a copy of the presentation going forward. Right, so this is a busy slide. Let me put the screen off. So what is the purpose of and why we decided to have these joint AMEU SAIEE webinars? This initiative and effort actually started more than 2 years ago, before the COVID pandemic. And we gave serious thought to this, both the leadership of SAIEE and AMEU, that given the significantly evolving power generation landscape, which in the main included the need to decarbonize the landscape, and of course the known challenges with the current ESCOM and municipal power utilities. And this is important in effectively and efficiently not executing their respective service delivery mandate as per the NESA requirements. So we could argue it's not a train smash. We're executing our service delivery, but in terms of the standard, we may not be. And so we felt that there was a serious need to, as a matter of priority, to craft out in a shared forum like the one we've got, the next 6 sessions, of all relevant and diverse key stakeholders by debating, deliberating, discussing views, ideas on how a future-proofed, digitalized Munich power utility would need to look like in the future. There was also cognizance and an appreciation that ESCOM, as a major and fellow power utility, has to play a significant and important role in the debates that I've just mentioned. And from an AMEU perspective, we have the view that restructuring only ESCOM in isolation is not going to solve the known challenges in power generation and power delivery sectors. No doubt, fixing ESCOM as also inter alia encapsulated in the recently announced State President's plan must be given top priority, and the AMEU fully supports this. But the restructuring of the EDI must follow soon as part of any future-proofing of South Africa's power utilities going forward. I just thought I'll read this because it's important. It gives context to the next 6 sessions. Right. This session today is on future-proofing. What do we mean by future-proofing? I did some significant research on this and came up with a definition that's very close to the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. I modified it slightly to suit our context. So let me read this out to you. Future-proofing a business is a methodology that is utilized to support companies, which includes power utilities, in defining the scope, scale, processes, and specifics of how their businesses, includes power utilities again, can evolve to meet critical challenges in climate change, nature loss, and mounting inequality, and deliver true value, actually across, and this includes social, environmental, and economic dimension, and I would add here further across the entire power generation and power delivery value chains. Right, now, I think this slide is quite important. As a SAIEE, in the 2 years we debated what is the definition of future to give us context in our planning and deliberations. And actually, it's only a few months ago that we defined the future in the following context. So we said there'll be a three-pronged approach in this journey. The first one will be a 0 to 10 years, with 0 being now and inclusive of an interim 0 to 3 years journey that will factor in the current South African electricity crisis. We can't get away from that. And then we said there'll be a longer than 10 years journey. Yeah. So, but in the main, it's the priority is 0 to 3 years and then 0 to 10 years. So what we said is that the webinar series and subsequent follow-up work will focus on the periods 1 and 2, 0 to 3, 0 to 10 years. Similarly, any future proofing that we want to design will focus on those similar periods, 1 and 2 above. And importantly, the initiatives, activities, projects for the above 2 periods will run in parallel. And as they say in the classics, we should not waste a crisis. So we have a crisis situation, arguably not to 2 years or not to 3 years. I think it's more 3 years. Hence, the opportunity will be taken to comment and advise on initiatives, projects, etc., that could be fast-tracked. That is not to waste a crisis. That could be fast-tracked from the 3 to 10 years into the 0 to 3 year period. I mean, we did this in the World Cup, the World Summit, climate change many years ago. So and globally, the crisis is taking advantage so positively to fast-track initiatives that may not be done in normal sector. Point number 8 is important for the avoidance of any doubt and misunderstanding. In respect of the 0 to 3 years, our comments will be in support of the government's current initiatives in addressing the current electricity crisis. Our comments will be to complement and support the government's efforts in this respect. Right, so let me move a bit faster now. The evolving power sector, right? So this is out of a study done by MIT. And so if you look at, and I've just kind of amended it to suit our situation. So in future proofing, the digitalized municipal distribution electricity of the future, these are some of the situations that needs to be addressed. And it'll be addressed in the next 6 sessions. Let me just read this out on some of the bullet points. What are the key distributed energy technologies can disrupt the power sectors? How might distributed energy resources, and I'll talk about that, impact the power system operations, markets, etc.? What business models may be deployed? What impact could these new business models have on incumbent utilities, ESCOM, and the municipalities, and what opportunities exist? How will regulation need to evolve? And Dr. Vally Padayachee will touch on this a bit more just now. Evolve to create a level playing field for both distributed and traditional energy resources. What are plausible visions of the future of the power sector? We'll get that. And importantly, the impact of the just energy transition and the current South African electricity crisis, as I indicated, will factor in this future power utility. And we said, just to reemphasize, a 0 to 10 year window, including a 0 to 3 year window. So just not to go into the details, the current system is no longer fit for purpose to sustain the reliable thing. Most energy systems are traditionally based on synchronous centralized power generation using hub and spoke model. Now we're going into energy, renewable energy, which is not dispatchable and so on, unless you get affordable storage. There's a need to decarbonize. And at the end of the system, the way we use energy is also changing as consumption by digital devices continue to grow. Right, so despite these major changes, the pattern of supply and demand are also changing. The physics, and I don't want to get into the detail of this, the physics of the near instantaneous movement of energy markets, of energy makes it extremely difficult to control. And we'll talk about this a bit more in session 4, 5, and 6 to avoid blackouts. And the need to drive drastic improvements in the architecture of the system is critical for the energy sector and most importantly, the end consumer. And of course, the cost, although the cost of technology is coming down, the cost of consumption is increasing and we need to get a balance of that. I mentioned the rising cost and point number 9 is important. No one idea, technology or company can provide the silver bullet to solve all the problems in the energy system. Right, and just to go further on the studies, on the MIT study, I won't get into more detail. There's a range of more distributed technologies, including flexible demand that's coming into the landscape. In many cases, these resources are of course, as it's coming down, affordable and ubiquitous information and communication systems. And in South Africa, as I said, we are currently faced by the crisis, which could prevail for the next 2 to 3 years. And a future South African municipal, arguably ESCOM, power utility has to accommodate all of this. Right. The power sector is in transition, so and hence the need for future proofing. So as I said, the power system of today is becoming more distributed. It's becoming more digitalized. The resource mix is becoming more renewable. Power systems are decarbonizing. Power systems are becoming increasingly integrated with other key sectors. So given the aforementioned, the key question, and I put it to you, the key question to be answered, maybe call it inter alia, whether there could be other questions, but I think for now, or responded to by power utilities going forward is how will the electricity services, which is our mandated utilities, that are today primarily provided in a centralized top-down manner be provided in the future. I'll repeat that. How will the electricity services that are today primarily provided in a centralized top-down manner be provided in the future? Of course, the trends that are driving the power utilities, as I say, there's a lot of intermittent power generation, a lot of integration of DERs, the use of big data and analytics, regulatory changes, new technologies, market dynamics, electrification, and hence, I keep on saying, the need for future proofing. The key success factors, and this is done globally, research, and hence the need for future-proofed utility, is grid modernization, adaptation to DERs, customer-centric evolution. This is key. Flexible generation and adjusting markets, regulatory and business models. All of them underpinned by digitalization and, of course, the 4IR, and now we're going into the 5IR journey. And of course, going forward, in any future-proofed utility going forward, there will be the aspect of flexible technologies will play a key role, right? And the flexible technologies will be centered around demand-side response, flexible generation, a whole host of technologies there, network what you call strengthening, etc., resilience, and of course, energy storage will be playing a great role. So given all of this, increasing asset utilization and efficiency of system balancing will drive, as part of flexible technologies, a future-proof system going forward. Now, I don't want to go into the details because I'm talking to the converted here. as we go into the future with increasing DERs, grid stability will play a key role. What are some of the grid stability problems, given that we have a serious ingress of renewable energy resources, frequency and voltage anomalies, overloading of existing transmission lines, demand and supply mismatch? How can they be solved? The use of energy storage technologies, implementation of smart grids. I would argue, from our colleagues, South Africa is still not yet ready with respect to affordable battery storage and smart grids in the next 2 to 3 years, given a whole host of issues, macroeconomics, global demand, etc. Of course, this slide says that there's a significant move from centralized generation to decentralized generation, meaning that the significant ingress of DERs, and this is going to, well, create a headache in inverted commas for grid operators, because it's much easier for the grid operator to manage the grid with centralized generation as to having spreads of DERs. And of course, the same thing, distribution generation caused by increase of renewable assets introduces challenges with the transmission. As a result, they must engage in sophisticated energy contracting and trading. This is important. Energy contracting and trading going forward is going to look a whole lot different, especially in the 10 years. And of course, this slide says, globally, we've always had centralized energy markets, centralized power markets, right? Now, with the move to clean energy technologies, renewables, etc., we are now going into decentralized energy markets. Arguably, South Africa is moving in that direction, I guess, but are we ready for that? So there's a need for future-proofing of future decentralized energy markets, power markets, and Workstream 3, led by Ati van der Merwe, will cover aspects of that. And giving context and the need for future-proofing, some high level, okay, at the moment, we are facing an unprecedented developmental crisis. The pandemic has served as the final straw, and we are always in the largest economic downturn. Unemployment levels are high, investment ratings have plummeted. Many in the emerging middle class have slid back to greater levels of poverty. ESCOM and other state utilities are in problems, including municipalities, an ailing coal fleet and chronic power cuts. We all know that. Rapidly increasing global concerns for climate change. What is now, giving context to the power crisis and the need for future-proofing, what is the understanding of the branding platform in the case of change? Just to read it out, I think it's important. The current performance of South Africa's power utilities, ESCOM and MUNICIPAL included, is seemingly and arguably fast accelerating downwards in a negative spiral, and if not arrested and turned around, as a matter of urgency, the consequence for the end-use customer, let alone South African Incorporated, is going to be diabolical, because these power utilities may not successfully execute on their respective service delivery mandates as per NESA. So that's the branding platform, we will argue, and the need for future-proofing. Our understanding of the problem statement in that context, how might these South African power utilities, ESCOM and MUNICIPAL included, respond to their respective poor performances, current challenges, and emerging disruptors as a matter of urgency to enable them to meet their mandated levels of service delivery, importantly, for emphasis, on a sustainable basis. Right, now, this is an important slide from a Munich perspective, right? I've done a bit of research on this and came up with this excellent paper by Dr. Tracy Ledger, who comes from this organization, Public Affairs. What she's saying is that, which makes, and we're going to give serious thought to this, is the current model for providing basic services, includes power and electricity, contributing to increasing standards of living, reduced household poverty, and greater equality from a municipal perspective. So it's the current model for municipalities. She argues that the current model of service delivery is unlikely ever to deliver its developmental goals, which goals are the main reason for the existence of local MUNICs. This is not just a service delivery or a local government program. The failure of municipal service delivery model is undermining all of South Africa's other efforts to reduce poverty and inequality. Within the constraints imposed by the current legislative and fiscal frameworks, the goal of affordable access to service must be achieved. Any sustainable solution must clearly prioritize universal access. I just thought I'll read this because this is fundamental to the challenges and the crisis faced by some of the municipalities. This is what Dr. Tracy Ledger. Now, the AMEU, we had a workshop and we have realigned the workshop outcomes in the last couple of years, and we are very clear on how we approach the challenges, right? So as a response to the burning platform and the earlier problem statements that I mentioned, we identified 6 challenges, and this is what the AMEU stance is in terms of future-proofing, future MUNIC, whether it's on the journey to 10 years. Priority challenge 1, and let me read this out. How might we as an AMEU collective serve the leadership within municipalities and the LCCT sector so that we can encourage collaboration? That's key. Not only with other MUNICs, but with other key stakeholders, including ESCOM. Priority challenge 2. How might we redesign cost-effective tariffs so that it can improve or enhance the long-term sustainability of the municipal utility? That's key. I mean, there's an argument made that we don't know how to set prices, both ESCOM and MUNICs. There's an argument from certain quarters globally that we do not know how to set tariffs and prices. We are very parochial, and we just lump it with parochial views. And I say that with respect. Priority challenge 3, how might we redesign the EDI business model? We know we had the REDS model in the early 2000s. Dr. Vally will talk about that. Some of us have been there. That model went for 8 years, and then it was stopped by government. That needs to be revived because the distribution sector, including the MUNICs, needs to be restructured. Priority challenge 4, of course, we have an aging infrastructure, so we need to turn that around. Of course, how might we convince national and local government to support and enable ring fencing of the services? That's important. And this is important, how might we accurately collect and process customer network data? And of course, this is the essence of this thing. This aspect in red, the AMEU has made it very clear to government, and we repeat this, that it and its municipal membership, together with SALGA, will want to play a pivotal role in any restructuring of the South African power distribution sector. It does not wish to be consulted as a third party in such a restructuring. And we say that even now. ESCOM is being restructured, the sector needs to be restructured, the EDI needs to be restructured, but as I mentioned previously, we need to fix ESCOM first and followed by the distribution sector. And then I think my last 2 slides. What could the future-proofed municipal electricity business look like? There's some perspective, and I took this from Dr. Vally, who gave me this information. A sustainable energy business which consists of a ring-fenced wise engineering energy trading business, a regulated wise engineering business, energy trading business, infrastructure asset owner license. Then we could have a self-regulation versus enforced regulation, self-imposed practices, and a model that induces investor confidence, and flexibility and significantly different approaches to the 8-to-5 service delivery. And then we could have a one-to-many business relationship, and that would entail embedded generation, IPP, energy storage, energy wheeling, energy trading, buying capacity, competitive markets. Of course, not forgetting the IPP scenario, and Tommy Garner will talk a lot more about that in his case study just now. And of course, significant technology digital enablement. We will be moving up to definitely into a real-time capability scenario. And then, of course, governance, leadership, and resource competency driven. And we have a serious crisis situation with respect to not skills, but competencies. I believe that we don't have competencies in the key areas of keeping the ship afloat. We have no doubt skills, but competencies are defined as skills, experience, and qualifications. And we must reflect on that and see if we have that both in the municipalities. And ESCOM, I would argue that we don't have that in key areas. Prof. Vikas van Ekek, the Dean of Stellenbosch, will talk about this aspect just now.